Good evening and welcome to A Deadly Silence. I'm your host, Larry Curtis, and it's the goal of all of us associated with our program to bring you current and educational information associated with the drug and alcohol epidemic, not only here in the city of Brockton, but throughout many of our South Shore communities. This evening, we're pleased to have as our guest James Bradley. Is it Jim? We call it
Sure.
Jim, okay. Jim Bradley. James is a treatment placement specialist with BRC Recovery out of Texas, as I recall correctly.
Correct.
And Jim is also a person in long-term recovery today as well.
Correct.
Jim, I want to welcome you to With Deadly Silence.
Thank you, Larry.
Pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure to be here.
One of the things we always like to talk about when we open our program is a little bit about your background growing up and how did you get into the throes of addiction and ultimately the road to recovery.
So I was raised well. You know, I have no real trauma history, you know, growing up. But what happened was down the road of, you know, my addiction, I got into OxyContin. Once I got into OxyContin, I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. From there, it turned into the more harder drugs, IV heroin, IV cocaine, right? And, you know, that started a long road. What that started was I've been to 75 plus detoxes.
75.
I've been to 6 halfway houses. I've been Section 35 6 times. And what happened, I had an opportunity this time around to stop going through the same revolving door, as people call it, right? And I went down, I had the opportunity to go to the place that I work for now in Austin, Texas, BRC Recovery.
BRC Recovery.
And what I got there was, it's a heavy 12-step program, which I was under the delusion that I was gonna be able to do the 12 steps on my own on the street, which people do complete, and they do, you know, live this life, you know, by going through them on the street. And I couldn't get it, right? So I went into this program. I had some time set aside where I could really focus on this stuff and really focus on, you know, what the issue at hand was and what I was dealing with. And because I didn't understand the disease of addiction. I didn't understand that I had lost the power of choice. You know, I thought that every time that I picked up again, I was making a bad decision. You know, I was just stupid is really what I thought at that point. But when I really learned of like what the disease was that I had by going through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, because it tells my story in there. I don't care when it was written. You know, it would seem like it was written yesterday and it was written about me. And I had a few people that were able to break that down to me in a language that I could understand. And from there, it took off. Once I identified as that person that they're talking about in that book, it seemed like all I needed to do was follow the simple steps that it gives you throughout the rest of those pages in that book. And from there, my life has taken off. And I didn't think that that was possible, you know, checking into that place. I didn't.
Now, what type of trauma or drama did the family, your immediate family, experience during this chaos?
A lot. Yeah. I mean, it was, you know, basically everything revolved around me. You know, because in my mind, I'm the most important person in the room, no matter when it was or where I go, right? So what I would do is
that's the drug telling you that.
Of course, right? So everybody's life revolved around mine. You know, how can we help him? Is he doing okay? You know, is my parents sleeping well at night? No, they're not, right? And so it's like a big tornado, right? And like I think I explained it to you in the past, right? So there's some situations, right, that now when I get to go to these treatment centers, I get to go to a treatment center like I went to, right? I go there for 90 days minimum, and I get a nice bed to sleep in. I get to see doctors and therapists. I get my meals cooked for me. I get to sit away and like really work on myself for 3 months. But I've been stirring up a tornado in my family for the past 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but just because you remove me from that situation, that tornado doesn't stop. You know what I'm saying? So I've caused a lot of damage.
The worries and concerns of the family are still there. Is this program going to work? How many other times has he been in a program? You said 75.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Wow.
And then you get into like codependency and enabling and things like that, and it's like, just take my mother for example. I was her reason for everything, right? I was her main focus. How can I help him? What can I do for him? Is he okay? And now you take me out of that, and it's still, just because I'm removed, it's kind of like a void in her life. And like I told you, I'm involved in some family meetings, and what those family meetings do is it's a situation for these families, these mothers, these fathers, these siblings, to be able to recover themselves, because you know their lives have been damaged. Maybe even more than mine.
And I think you hit on two important issues that, you know, our listeners need to understand, is that, you know, enabling versus helping the person who's dealing with the substance abuse disorder. It's a very fine line, you know, when you're dealing with a loved one, you know. And then the fact that as a family, you know, you yourself and your loved ones need recovery as well.
Exactly. From
the trauma or the tornadoes you identified.
Exactly. With these families, right, there's what I like to tell families now is there's two situations that you can be in. There's no gray area in my eyes. You're either supporting their drug addiction or you're supporting their recovery. There's no in between. And these families become very enabling. You know, so it's tough to break that wall down, to break that barrier. But when you do, that's when we can start doing some real work.
And how does a family or a loved one realize it's either supporting or enabling? Supporting the recovery or enabling the addiction. You know, I mean, that's a really difficult line for a mother, a father, even some siblings.
I would say the best way is to speak to other families who have been through the same situation, and to understand the pain that they went through and the amount of time it took them to get to the place where they were at, to give their son or daughter or their loved one a real chance. Because when there's enabling going on, it doesn't, speak for myself as a drug addict, right? When enabling is going on, I am going to ride that out as long as possible. Sure. You know, so when they see other families and what they did and where they're at now and get their input on it, I think it has a bigger effect.
And I think that's, I mean, I know one of the successful programs that Peg and I took advantage of during our two sons' substance use issues was Learn to Cope.
Yes.
You know, and that, you know, is a phenomenal organization. So there are other organizations out there similar to Learn to Cope that families are able to go to.
Exactly,
and be with families who have either been through the difficulties or experiencing the existing difficulties and realize they're not alone. Yes. You know, I think that's one of the big keys is that, you know, at home you sit there, you're dealing with that emotional roller coaster of guilt, shame, you know, embarrassment of what's taking place, you know, but you're not helping yourself.
Exactly. You know? And then you bring into effect, I mean, we're from Boston, Massachusetts, right? So you bring it to the effect that most of these families are Irish Catholic, and you get an Irish Catholic father that, you tell him, listen, you should come to this support group.
Don't dirty my. I don't want to launder my dirty sheets.
Exactly, right. What happens in the house stays in the house. All these rules that we live by that are really harmful. You know.
Stigmas.
Yeah, exactly. Really, I grew up with that. What happens in the house stays in the house.
Right.
And I mean that can be, and that transferred over to myself as an adult, and at certain points in my life, that could be extremely harmful for me. You know, and those were the rules I was growing up. I was raised on.
So you were the tornado,
if you
will, you know, for the family life. Now, do you have children now?
I do.
You do?
I do.
So let's talk about that, the impact there.
I do. I have two small children. My son, Declan, is about to be 3 years old. On May 4th, he'll be 3 years old. And then I have a daughter, Lainey, and she will be 2 on September 11th. I mean, it's tough to forget that one, right? And I mean, it's a reason for living. Like, it's amazing. And like when I first started going through this process, right, going through the process of the 12 steps and recovery, I didn't care. People will tell you that you need to do this for yourself. If you don't do it for yourself, nothing else is, it's not going to work. So you got to keep yourself and your recovery first. And when I first started doing this, like, I didn't care enough about myself or my life to do anything about it. I was totally okay with the fact that I was going to die of a heroin overdose. So what I needed to do at the time, and I was able to have had the opportunity of having these children, that I needed to do it for them at first. And this is what worked for me. I'm not saying it's going to work for everybody. I did it, when I first started out, I was doing it for them. And then throughout the process, it became known to me that, okay, I need to keep myself first, and I need to keep my recovery first. I'll never be able to be the father that they deserve. And then, just moving down the road through the steps, like, it's just, it's amazing. And I'm a father of my children.
You mentioned you've been through multiple different programs, during your substance abuse period. What were the good points, or what were the negative points that maybe, you need to be aware of? Because you hear different stories that, some programs, halfway houses or whatever, they're just taking the money, things of that nature, or they really don't do drug screens, or they might say they have policies, but they don't adhere to the policies,
Yeah, I mean, so number one, the length of stay is too short. For a heroin detox, you're talking 5 to 7 days. 5 to 7 days, and then you can put in for a bed at a CSS or a TSS, which is the next step down the road. And if those beds aren't available, you get kicked to the street. So it's just, number one, it's not enough time. Number two, like, there's no solution in these detoxes or in these CSS, TSS programs.
And the CSS stands for?
Clinical stabilization services and transitional stabilization services.
So the ability of coming out of a detox, whether it be 3, 5, 7 days, and then getting into a program that will continue the clinical needs of the addict at this point in time.
Exactly. And then so say you do get a bed at one of those facilities, right? And then there's really no solution in these programs. It's all clinically based groups of, this is your brain on drugs. Write out a triggers list, write out write a goodbye letter to heroin. These are things that they do at these programs, which, can be helpful to the person who might not be the real deal alcoholic or the drug addict. But for the person, the real deal alcoholic or drug addict, making a triggers list doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Am I never going to go into a Dunkin' Donuts bathroom ever again in my life? It's just, there's another solution out there. And I was just unaware of it for so long, and I would keep going to these programs, right? And the way I like to explain it is that going to these programs would be like going to a doctor, and I have an injury, and he keeps giving me x-rays. X-rays. Oh, you need another x-ray. You need another x-ray. When, and now I'm 75, 80 x-rays in, when all I needed was an MRI the whole time. And I went to this program, and I got an MRI, and now, and that was what I needed the whole time. It's because my insurance, I have Mass Health. Most people I know have Mass Health. My Mass Health will pay for me to go to these programs 100+ times. But they won't pay for me one time to go to a long-term treatment center. It's tough.
It's kind of ridiculous, ass backwards, if you would.
It is. I mean, keeps me off the street. I can go to this detox and this detox and this detox, but I'm not getting the real treatment that I need.
Now, what's your feeling in relationship to kind of the substitute medications? You've got, Suboxone, you've got methadone, you've got the Vivitrol's out there, and some programs. I mean, to me, it's a substitute for the actual drug, heroin itself, if you would, or the opioids.
I mean, I don't agree with them. I don't agree with them. What they're doing is delaying the inevitable. It comes to a point where you're dependent upon these drugs, and it's great. Maybe you're not stealing and robbing to get what you need, but nobody really talks about how extremely hard these are to come off of. They're harder to come off of than the drug itself, than heroin or cocaine or anything itself. But when it comes down to it, I personally never took, I was prescribed Suboxone for 5 years.
Okay.
I never once took it correctly.
Yep.
I would sell it to support my drug of choice, my drug of no choice, right? Because I don't have a choice over whether I take this or not, right? And out of the hundreds of people that I know that have been on these medications, I know one person that's taken it correctly, Suboxone. I know one person that's taken it correctly. Now it's 7 years down the road. He's on 2 8 milligrams of Suboxone a day. He has a new house. He got married. They have a child. He's got a good job. And 7 years later, and he's still on 2 8 milligrams a day. What happened? Are you going to be on it for the rest of your life? Maybe. You know, does that seem like a life to me that I would want to be involved in? No, because it's just what these drugs do is they keep you separated from finding a real solution. Vivitrol, I'm not totally against Vivitrol. If you're using Vivitrol to get you over a hump to be able to do some real work on yourself, that is okay in my mind. But if you're using it and you think Vivitrol is going to be the solution, you really have another thing coming, because it's not. It's not. It's just it's going to keep you away from, if your drug of no choice is heroin, it's going to keep you away from heroin, but there's going to be other drugs involved, and then it gets to the 24th, 25th day, and we'll see if you go get your other appointment, you know?
So in your travels around the New England region now, you're working for a recovery program today.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So I work for BRC Recovery. It's based out of Austin, Texas. It is a 90-day minimum gender-specific program, so men and women are separate, which I think is important, because it's
But both
less
men and women are
distracting.
available to go.
Yes, men and women are available to go. It's just two separate facilities. And, you know, it's big on, we specialize in the chronic relapser and the treatment resistant. And, it's heavy 12 steps. There is a clinical piece involved in it. But it's we do work out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's very community-based. Because around here, you'll hear a lot of things like, oh, just worry about yourself, focus on yourself. And that's not what we do there. It's about the community. We don't step over people to get where we're going. We pick them up and bring them with us. And I think that was a big factor for me. And obviously, like I believe in this program because it's where I got well.
As part of being community-based, what, if I hear you correctly, is that's really, while you're, dealing with your substance abuse and recovery aspect, you still have to realize that at some point in time you're going to be back in the community. And whether that's, the job market or whatever, people, relationships, things of that nature. So
Exactly.
That's kind of where your focus has some focus on as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just general life skills.
Yeah.
General life skills. And there is also another program that we opened up as well. It's called Spearhead Lodge. It's all under the BRC umbrella. Spearhead Lodge is geared specifically for the millennial age of males right now. It's only for males. It's from 18 to 26, 28 years old. And it's the same program. It's geared more for that age. And, they might do some more activities, because the focus was we didn't want to use all that natural energy you have as a young adult male against you in a classroom setting the whole time. There is still a big book in classroom settings, but group style settings. But they do some more activities and sports events and things like that. But it's nice to be able to have a separate program for the age, because the median age group has dropped significantly over the past 5-6 years, and you can guess why. It probably went from mid 30s to around 24, 25 years old.
Mid-20s now, right? Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. So I've always been curious, as a recruiter, if you would. Okay. I mean, what's the kind of the marketing message for facilities such as yours? In being here, we're in New England. Yeah. You're a New England outreach coordinator, to really try to get people who are serious about their recovery to relocate down to your facility down there.
I mean,
talk a little bit about that.
What I do basically is, you know, of course, I'd love everybody to go down to Texas. I'd love everybody to go there because I really believe in this program, and I went there, and that's where I got well. So I know what they do there, and, you know, I'm behind it 100%. But some people's situations, that might not be the case. What I do is I assist these individuals and their families and their loved ones into placing them into the best treatment possible for their situation. That, you know, through my experience and through people, the relationships that I've developed, that I believe in their programs. You know, because there are some programs out there, especially, you know, in this business, that are not, you know, up to standards, if you will. You know, but so if it's something that I believe in and I feel that it is good for their situation, I'll recommend those programs. I don't care where people go to get well, as long as they get well.
One of the obstacles you always hear about is the ability to pay for programs such as that. You know, you're talking, you know, a 90-day, you know, minimum stay, maybe longer, or even a transition to an outpatient type of of environment. What's been the experience there for your organization?
Well, the way it works is, so if you see these programs and they, you know, it's $30,000 a month, but you have the correct insurance, and your insurance will cover everything. Well, the reasoning behind that is it's a clinically based program. If the insurance is going to cover everything, it's clinically based, meaning they have to do, you know, 6 clinical hours 4 to 5 times a week. And, you know, those are the groups that I was split. You know, this is your brain on drugs type of groups, right? And so what we did, you know, we will take some insurance at BRC. We will take insurance for a portion. If you have the correct insurance, we will take it for a portion. The reason we don't take it for the whole thing is because we weren't willing to risk the integrity of our program that's been working with a high success rate. Extremely, like an almost unbelievable success rate for the past 10 years. And so we weren't willing to risk the integrity of that. So what we do is we'll take a little bit of pressure off the families by accepting that insurance, but instead of doing 6 clinical hours 4 or 5 times a week, maybe we do 1 clinical hour twice a week, or whatever it may be. I don't know the exact number of what we do, but we weren't willing to take out the big book and put back in clinical work.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
And, you know, when you talk about the 12 steps in Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, how important is it that with that sponsor and peer support that, you know,
it's extremely important. Yeah. You know, going through that book, going through the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, it is very difficult to understand. You know, it's a textbook. So if I don't have somebody explaining to me what it means, because this is written in 1935, there's words in that book that we don't even use anymore. You know what I mean? So if I don't have somebody explaining it to me, I'm not going to understand it. And a sponsorship is vitally important. You know, there's a person that's going to bring you through that book. They're going to take your hand. They're going to put your hand in the hand of God's, and you're going to develop a relationship with a God of your understanding, and then you take off. But it's tough. As a sponsor, you can't tell somebody that this is what they need to do. I can't tell somebody that this is what they need to do. I can only let them know that, you know, this is what I do. And if you feel that you're the real deal alcoholic that it talks about in this book, I can show you what I do and what was shown to me when I was first going through. And, you know, then we can take it from there. But they have to identify. I can't tell them that this is what they need to do.
Yeah. And you talk about the spiritual aspects. You know, you hear that in a lot of different recovery programs that, you know, coming to understand whoever your believer, your God is, you know, that is a kind of an important piece of the foundation.
It's extremely important. You're going to see people that bounce around that subject, and I'm not that guy. You know what I mean? It is vitally important, but it's cool because it's of your own understanding. So to come up with what my God is today, I really couldn't even explain what it looks like, but I know it's different from what I grew up with. You know, I was raised Irish Catholic myself, so my God was a guy with a long white beard that sat on a big chair on a cloud, and he told me if I could come in this gate or not. And then if I did something wrong, what happened?
Oh, yeah.
I went to
you're
hell.
gonna go to hell.
I went to hell, right?
Yeah, right.
And that's just not what it looks like today.
Yeah.
My God is a loving God, right? My God has been putting opportunities in my path the whole time, but I have been disregarding those and not taking the action on them and just stepping over them and doing whatever I wanted to, right? But those opportunities have still been here. And they're here now, right? So now I've been asleep to those opportunities for so long. Now that I've been awoken, I can see those opportunities, take some action around them, and get the positive results that I'm looking for.
Okay. We've got about a minute left, so I'm curious if you had to say two points of view. What would you say to a person who is dealing with a substance abuse disorder and what they need to do to begin on the road to recovery? And secondly, what would you say to the family members of that loved one?
They need to have an open mind, and they need to be willing. Is for the person who's dealing with
substance.
yeah. They need to have an open mind to try some things differently, and they need to be willing enough to have some desperation to save their own lives, because there's a very small window of opportunity, and when that window is open, it is already closing at a rapid pace before they even know it. So they need to jump through that window immediately, or that window is going to slam shut, and it's going to take a lot of pain to open it back up. And for the families, I would say that to take a real look at their codependency and the enabling. The enabling needs to stop, because unless the enabling doesn't stop, nothing's ever going to happen, because as a drug addict, alcoholic, we're going to ride that enabling out until the wheels fall off.
Okay. So tell us, how would somebody get in contact with you or with BRC to get further information? Tell us.
Yes, I mean, they could. You can call my cell phone directly.
Yeah.
It's on 24 hours a day. My cell phone number is 978-645-7067. They can also email me at jbradley@brcrecovery.com, and they can look up our website by you can just Google BRC Recovery, and it'll come right up.
And how do you look at the success of what you're doing up here in New England now? You're helping people out up here?
I like to think so. I try my best daily, and I would like to think I am helping people, and you know what? Even if I just help one person and one person gets well, all the work that I put into it is worth it. Excellent.
Well, Jim, I want to thank you first of all for coming in and sharing your story with us and sharing some information about BRC. And
thank you for having me.
On behalf of all of us here at A Deadly Silence, I want to say thank you, Jim, and hope to have you back again another time.
Absolutely.
Well, that's our episode for tonight. We'll see you again next week.